So, this is something we haven't talked about that much. Have you ever been in a narcissistic relationship and you were the one who was not faithful? And this may have been a full-on sexual affair. You may have had an emotional affair. You may have had some sort of electronic digital texting affair, lots of texting, lots of intimate messages. Your affair might have been brief. Your affair might have lasted years. And then, did this affair you had, did it lead you to actually leave the narcissistic relationship? And you reflect, yeah, perhaps you may not have left it otherwise. And it doesn't matter if you left this relationship and actually ended up in a new relationship with this person you had the affair with, or that they were merely a bridge to you leaving the relationship and you didn't end up in a long-term relationship with them. It also doesn't matter whether or not you got caught in this affair. This exit affair is a thorny issue for people going through narcissistic relationships. And it's just what it sounds like. It's a romantic, sexual, or emotional, or electronic relationship a person has outside of their narcissistic relationship, their primary relationship. Listen, in most of the stuff we talk about, we focus on the narcissistic person cheating because they often do. They don't always do, but they quite often do. But people who are in relationships with narcissistic people sometimes cheat too. And listen, everyone who has engaged in infidelity has their reasons, and they can and they will provide rationalizations. They'll say, it was just one time. It meant nothing. I thought we were on a break. We haven't had sex in a long time. You stopped paying attention to me. I paid for the sex, so it doesn't count. It was just kissing. It was just a few dirty texts when I was drunk. It was just texting. I don't love them. I love you. I wasn't even attracted to them. Blowjobs aren't sex. Add yours to this, okay? But you get the idea. And sadly, often it isn't the crime, but it's the cover-up. I'm not sure what's worse for any of us, that your partner cheats or that they gaslight you about it afterwards. Only you know the answer to that. This video is not about the morality of cheating. It is specifically about this exit affair that people who are in narcissistic relationships may find themselves in. So why do exit affairs happen? They don't only happen in narcissistic relationships, but why do they happen? For all the reasons that any affair happens, but a few more. Using the example of narcissistic relationships, people in narcissistic relationships have not felt emotional intimacy and empathy for a long time. They just haven't. They're often controlled. They're not seen. They're not heard. They're not cherished. And they may have also had a narcissistic partner who did cheat on them. For many folks in these relationships, a new person who comes around, a new attentive friendship, a series of attuned conversations, a sort of mutual spark can slowly evolve into more. Many people who have exit affairs will say, it really happened slowly, and before I knew it, this person's texts were the only bright spot in my day. And I became less focused on the chaos and the confusion of my narcissistic partner's behavior. And for once, I was actually just kind of getting lost in these new good vibes of being in touch with someone who listened to me, who saw me, who understood me. Many people in exit affairs will say that the affair made the narcissistic relationship feel a little bit more bearable for a moment. They found that they looked forward to the texts or the messages or the emails or the calls that would come in, that occasional call. The exit affairs don't always end up in sex. Sometimes they do. But sometimes to the world, it just looks like an intense new friendship. Now, it's very possible, and I think it's probable, that the exit affair sort of opens a portal in the narcissistic relationship. A sort of being reminded that there is a normal or even a happy life possible outside of this relationship, that someone you are attracted to in some way actually doesn't criticize you, but they actually notice you and they encourage you and they're happy for you and they don't gaslight you. You know, one woman who's had an exit affair said to me, she said, you forget you're in a prison when you're in one of these exit affairs. The control, the manipulation, the mediocrity of the narcissistic relationship had become her new normal. And then she said that when I started talking with this new guy about this new project we were assigned to, We worked well together, and then the project was done. It was like a consulting gig. The project was done. And then, like a year later, they ran into each other at a professional conference, and they started a friendship. And even the simplest thing, he was offering feedback on an idea that I had in a really nice way, or asking me a small thing about my day, I completely forgot that a relationship with someone could feel that way, even though it was a friendship. Ironically, the woman who had this experience, she didn't leave the narcissistic relationship she was in for many years. There were a whole variety of financial and cultural and custody issues involved. And when the man that she was having this friendship with for all this time had hoped for more, at the time she felt she couldn't go there. But she started to feel stronger in herself, and she started disengaging from her narcissistic marriage in a much stronger way. About 10 years later, she left, and she credits her experience with that man for planting a seed. And the divorce was a mess, and all of it. The husband never found out she was having this romantic texting relationship, and she felt very strong when she left. For her, that relationship was a reminder of what life could look like outside of this relationship, and that was so eye-opening for her. The exit affair, in her case, didn't catapult her out. It basically wedged open a door that, in her case, that let in the light, but she didn't walk out of it for years. Exit affairs, as I said, don't always end in a person going off into the sunset with their affair partner. Many times, the exit affair is a catalyst, an opening of the eyes, and a filling a person with a little bit more courage to get out. Sometimes people get caught in their exit affairs, and we're going to talk about more about that in a moment. And then their narcissistic relationship ends. And sometimes, yes, a person goes off into the sunset with the exit affair person and starts a new life. And if this is a narcissistic relationship where this is happening, it gets complicated. Because despite you going through tons of bad stuff in the narcissistic relationship, if you do leave and go off with this new person, for a long time, you'll be viewed as the one who not only blew up the marriage or the relationship, but then had the gall to walk off with the new person. And there can be a lot of hurt and shame and anger. And basically, you become the bad one, even though you went through the mess of the narcissistic relationship. Now, it's the narcissistic person who is fully the victim, and you're the awful person who broke up a marriage or broke up a family. In fact, you might even be in a situation that your narcissistic partner did cheat on you, but you never told anyone else. Now, though, the narcissistic person is positioning themselves as the victim of all of this. And now, if you do bring up their past affair that you didn't talk about, well, now you're being viewed as taking retribution rather than taking responsibility. None of it's fair. These relationships never are, but that's just how it goes down. Now, lots of times people don't get caught in exit affairs, especially if they're not sexual or there's not contact. Though, be aware, narcissistic people, for all of their selfishness and their low empathy, they can be quite socially perceptive, and they may even notice nuanced changes in you, and they're always suspicious, and they have poor boundaries. So if they do suspect anything from you, they will have no problem going into your phone or your email or social media and figuring it out. So be aware of that. Because while the narcissistic person may be ignoring you and seemingly have no interest in you as a human being, and may even be betraying you in some way, they will become enraged at the thought of someone sort of taking something, because you are a thing to them, that they believe belongs to them. And it's more about control over you than affection for you. But the shame and ego injury is what will enrage them. And at the end of the day, none of us like being cheated on. Narcissistic people are no different. The exit affair does lots of things. It becomes a source of support for someone who may be feeling lost in that relationship, their primary relationship, or unseen or even ambivalent about a narcissistic relationship. The exit affair partner may even serve as a sounding board. The exit affair could be a distraction. So the endless ick of the narcissistic relationship gets softened in the midst of having something to look forward to. And as I said, many an exit affair may actually be the beginning of a long exit. It just makes the narcissistic relationship more bearable for a long time as people get their ducks in line. An exit affair may be a friendship that you lean on so much that it does turn more intimate and intense. And again, it becomes a major source of support. The exit affair does allow people to glimpse into a very real and different kind of future. And most people who have exit affairs will share that they did maintain deep fantasy lives about what would have happened if they had met their exit affair partner sooner, or when they were younger, or what it would even look like to have a life with their exit affair partner or to make a life with them. The exit affair almost becomes like a scope through which to envision a different kind of life, which can be quite difficult to do when you're lost in the weeds of a narcissistic relationship. The challenge is, though, that an exit affair can also carry massive psychological consequences for a person who has had one. Remember, we are talking about the person in the relationship who's probably not narcissistic and is being narcissistically abused, or basically stuck in a relationship that is characterized by narcissism. Many people will say that the entire exit affair process was bittersweet and messy, that they grew to care about someone, that it was fun, it was uplifting, it was even healing, it was exciting, it was even romantic, but also many people who have exit affairs will say that they did feel very guilty, and that some of them would even go so far as to say that now I feel like I'm as bad as this narcissistic partner, that maybe they even doubt themselves. Maybe I'm the narcissistic one, and I'm now a betrayer myself. Maybe that should be with a betrayer. And these fears are often magnified if a person gets caught in one of these exit affairs, where family and friends will now view the person having the exit affair as the problem, with no regard for how unhealthy the original relationship was. This can also mean that if the exit affair doesn't lead to a quick exit out of the relationship, the conditions within the narcissistic relationship will be worse than ever. It is very common for people who have exit affairs to feel a sense of moral injury, which can have deep impacts. This sense that I did a really bad thing, and that can magnify and compound the already existing issues of self-blame and all of that raised by being in a narcissistic relationship. So, what does happen if a person gets caught in an exit affair? The short answer is that it is not good. In the rarest of rarest of rarest of rarest cases, a person is with a narcissistic partner who was so indifferent to them that the narcissistic person says bye, and they might shame you a bit, and maybe they already even have their new supply lined up, and then it's done. That's probably not what's going to happen for most people. In some cases, your exit affair can put you in literal danger. Narcissistic folks on average are quite vindictive and quite vengeful. In the most severe cases, we may see threatened or actual physical violence towards you or your exit affair partner, and if not physical violence, it can be psychological violence that looks like stalking, smear campaigns, and making your life, the affair partner's life, and even your friends' lives who may have simply known about this new person in your life and didn't tell your narcissistic person, make all of your lives miserable in every way. Narcissistic people love litigation, and they may even go there. If you have children together, it is quite possible the narcissistic person will tell your children about your exit affair, and will also very likely tell friends, family, even people you work with, anything to bring you down. Now, most states in the United States have what are called no-fault divorce laws, but if you don't live in one of those states, being caught out in an exit affair can make the divorce much more difficult, and your exit affair may be used to paint you in a really poor light publicly, as well as being said that you're a bad parent. Being caught in an exit affair, sure, it might press the accelerator on your getting out of your narcissistic relationship, but you're often left with scorched earth, and the mess of the breakup may be far, far greater. But in all of this, it's important that you be aware of the true nature of your narcissistic partner and the severity of their behavior. This is important because it can, in some cases, get physically or psychologically dangerous. I mean, that's not most cases, but in some cases that could happen. In most cases, it's just a big, big mess. And what about the actual risks of the actual exit affair? Well, you do have to be aware that this exit affair could bring up a real risk of love bomb number 2. When you are in a narcissistic relationship, there is a vulnerability to a new love bomber coming along. Your narcissistic relationship is such a skewed culture of empathy and intimacy and communication that if someone comes along and says the right things or even just kind things, it can be easy to get pulled in because it feels compelling and healing. So this can set a person up who is in a narcissistic relationship to fall for love bomb number 2. Someone who says the things you have been wanting to hear, because basically a narcissistic relationship is a version of psychologically starving to death. And in these cases, when over time the exit affair person is revealed to be toxic or antagonistic again, the person having the affair will have even more negative emotions and shame, not to mention they may get painted into a very bad corner in terms of making decisions about how to best exit the narcissistic relationship, and may pin their hopes onto a new narcissistic person who may feel different than the one they're in a relationship, and then you got a whole new set of new problems. Now, the challenge of the exit affair is that infidelity is not easy to talk about with other people. Folks either can take the stance of black and white, that all infidelity is bad and all people who have affairs are bad people, or people might go fully to another side of all affairs can be explained away and understood and forgiveness is needed, which often hurts folks who are in relationships with serial cheaters who are never accountable, and the people who are being cheated on end up blaming themselves. Now, when a person is in the emotionally abusive mess of a narcissistic relationship, an exit affair may actually be an attempt to individuate, to have a separateness, to have a life, a separate identity outside of this suffocating relationship. It can feel good in the midst of a life in which a lot feels bad. It can be a little thing to cherish or enjoy. It can be an eye-opener. And in many cases, it can be a kick in the pants. Not necessarily a walk into the sunset, but what the hell am I wasting my life on sort of situation, because I know it could be different. The challenge for folks who have had exit affairs while being in narcissistic relationships is wondering, where do I even turn for support or guidance? Like I said, infidelity is such a polarizing issue. Now, many friends may not be able to be there. Some of your friends may even take the stance of, well, if you cheat, then you're as bad as them. Or what are you complaining about? You're a cheater too. Okay, sure, your partner is selfish and mean and cold and critical, but you're the one having the affair. Folks who have exit affairs struggle with shame and the unfairness and hypocrisy of it all, especially if the exit affair is what almost felt like salvation, is what got you out. But when it gets found out, the person who had the exit affair and the narcissistic person, if you are lucky, you're viewed at the same level, but usually we tend to throw the scarlet A on the cheater. If the narcissistic person is a cheater too, well, then the best you may get is, well, you were both cheaters. And ultimately, the view of the world would be, well, you're just like them, so it's just good that you're no longer together. Finding folks who can holistically see what you experienced in the relationship, hold space while you process the confusing emotions of having an affair or a romantic or intimate tie to someone else while you're in a narcissistic relationship, the really tough mix of shame, guilt, fear, sadness, anxiety, the sense of moral failure, but coupled with recognition of all the bad things that happen in the relationship, and on top of that, recognizing that you may just be trying to survive, that can take one hell of a therapist who can see the 360-degree spherical view of this. And most people who have exit affairs don't get this kind of support. They just get judged. If I have only one piece of guidance for people who are having exit affairs, proceed cautiously, be mindful of what would happen if you were caught, Don't bury yourself under judgment, but be careful that if you are caught, not just by the narcissist, but by the world at large, and also be very careful about sharing anything with anyone. For as progressive as this world may feel, infidelity remains a lightning rod issue. And even though you may want to share the scraps of joy you are experiencing in your life because of this new experience in your life, if this is all happening within the context of a narcissistic relationship, it is likely too risky. And if you are having an exit affair, reap the lessons from it and be honest with yourself about it. Is this exit affair just sort of an antidote to the toxicity of the relationship? Or is it really a perception shifter about why you may choose to leave? I suppose it's not an exit affair if you don't leave. Then it's just an affair. But keep in mind that some folks have the exit affair, or what feels like the exit affair. They get ready to leave the relationship, maybe even try to make a go of it with the exit affair person. Maybe you got caught in the affair, maybe you didn't get caught in the affair, but you don't leave right away, just like the story I told you. Sometimes there is even a post-exit affair Hoover, and you may get pulled back into the narcissistic relationship. But keep in mind, the narcissistic person will weaponize that affair for the rest of your relationship, and you have to be prepared for that. It will be the shame badge that you wear for the rest of your days, and it will be pulled out anytime the narcissistic person wants to dominate, manipulate, even under the best of circumstances. An affair is often something that will come up over and over again. In a narcissistic relationship, it will be a weapon. Now, this is a complex issue, and I have talked with many people who have had exit affairs, and I understood it. I fully understood it. It infused color and light into a life that had been at best black and white and lifeless. It was having a space where life felt hopeful for a minute. It was trying to make an unworkable relationship, the narcissistic relationship, feel bearable. It was an anemic attempt to survive, and that is another risk, that a person remains in a narcissistic relationship longer because of the breadcrumbs that the affair gives them. You're still starving to death, but the extra crumbs can keep you stuck longer, which is another risk, and again, that may not be an exit affair then. But shame helps nobody. And the more coherently you can see the why and the what of it, it's less about, I'm as bad as the narcissistic person I'm in a relationship with, or I only deserve this sort of half-happiness of the exit affair, or I'm just a bad person and I don't deserve to be happy at all. And it can shift more into more of a, I feel helpless, I'm human, that's why this happened. Only with that can you work towards the only path to healing, which is you figuring out yourself, separate from the confines of the narcissistic relationship. And keep your circle tight, who you talk to. Even people who do really love you can't always hold space for talking about something like this. Recognize that everything about narcissistic relationships is complicated, especially the ways that you get out. After years of getting little compassion in a relationship, it can be difficult to find some for yourself, especially in light of an exit affair. But ultimately, that is essential if you're going to fully heal from one of these relationships. I have to say that for many, many people I talk to, they will acknowledge there is no way in hell I would have had the strength, the courage, anything to leave this relationship were it not for my exit affair. The exit affair was a bridge, it was an exit, it was a way out. And like I said, many people didn't stay in them, but it created a perceptual shift in them. It was the lights going on, it was the blinds being lifted, and it served that function. Some people will say that even though the exit affair was a very, very sloppy, bumpy, messy way to leave, they did get out, and that's what allowed them to heal. So, like I said, this is one of those conversations where more often than not, it devolves into sort of a moralistic, well, you had an affair and that's the problem, and you shouldn't even be using the word narcissistic. And that's why I did this video, because maybe you can't find a place to talk about it, but I hope that some of the words in this let you know that you're definitely not alone, that this is a very difficult process, that people struggle when this happens. But if this is happening to you, there also have to be cautions to be considered, because exit affairs can take what's potentially already a messy situation, trying to leave a narcissistic relationship and make it downright volatile. Thanks again.